Hi, my name is Adam Philpott. I'm the Senior Vice President for the EMEA region here at McAfee. And today I'm going to talk to you about an element of organizations' digital strategy that we see a huge amount of as a result of the pandemic, but also coming out of the pandemic and how that evolves. And that relates to the modern workplace and how that's changing as a part of that digital strategy. So first of all, let's start more broadly around some of the macro trends that we're seeing both before and during the pandemic. And I can put them in three buckets. The first is around digital transformation, organizations using technology to better perform internally, to drive efficiencies internally, but also to reach their customers and clients and constituents as well. So the role of technology being front and center to every organization. The second is around stopping threats. We see organizations, as they digitize, be exposed to risks in the cyber domain. So understanding and stopping those threats in a very timely manner is absolutely now mission critical to organizations. And then finally, it's around doing all of this efficiently, finding efficiencies, reducing complexity in the way in which they facilitate and execute their digital strategy, but ensuring that the way they're managing risks through their cyber capability isn't exacerbating complexity, it's reducing it, and they're able to do these things efficiently and at pace. And so we see organizations adopting cloud as a major part of that. Some very far advanced and have gone cloud first. Others taking their time a bit more as they look at the different risks and perhaps in more of a hybrid mode, and then yet more who's still just starting to take some first tentative steps on that path. And why are they using cloud? Well, it gives them some of those things around efficiency. It helps them reach their customers in new ways. It helps them accelerate their time to market. Sometimes it's commercial. How do they move from more of a CapEx model to an OpEx model as well? So many different reasons that we're seeing. And that's cloud is just one element of that digital strategy. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. But when we think about the Middle East, we've seen a huge acceleration in the last 12 months or so in terms of cloud adoption, as organizations have had to be more flexible in terms of connecting different users in different places, particularly remotely, with different applications to ensure business and organizational continuity. So a huge change that we've seen there, and a greater embracing of the cloud in the Middle East in particular. And so if we dig a little more into some of those challenges and opportunities, you can see some of the data there, which talks about how much we've seen an increase in some of these capabilities like cloud and collaboration tools, for example, but also how we've seen a huge increase in some of the threats that organizations are facing as well. As we look at the threat landscape, it's extremely dynamic. More and more threats out there, some volume, some very targeted and sophisticated, targeting the end user, for example, using social engineering as we now look at this remote working environment. And of course, time to detect and time to respond is absolutely essential. And then when we think about complexity, so many organizations deploying additional tools, additional capabilities, and whilst they fix a narrow area particularly well, the level of complexity that they add to the overall system and the efficiency is detrimental to an organization's ability to withstand and address risks as well. Of course, as organizations digitize and new devices, new locations, but also more cloud capability, it's an ever expanding attack surface, of course, as well. And all of this, while which there's not enough talent in the market and it's too expensive and too slow to rely on mankind, and there's not enough talent there to run these sorts of systems as well. So trying to find a path using technology, using people and process as we do that. And then of course, in terms of transformation, it's about the customer experience, whether they're internal or external, whether those different ways that we're helping them be productive and do their jobs in the way that they need to is something that we're doing within the realms of security, of course, as well. And those tools that we're providing are safe and are being utilized as well. And they're not finding ways around those tools to bring in other things that are perhaps less secure. So lots of different challenges that we can think about holistically as we design our security strategy. And so this really comes together in a couple of key trends. I talked about the workplace, how that is changing, but also the threats that we're facing in the workplace are, of course, changing. So we need to think about those two different dimensions as we think about our architectures and our security systems. The post-perimeter age is one way of looking at this. This is how where work and where workloads have shifted over time. So in the past, we used to have offices, remote offices, headquarters that were connected to information and connected to the cloud. That's changed. Now there's so many remote people, we can almost think of every individual as a mobile office. They have their own devices, often unmanaged. They're accessing cloud applications, often not provided by the corporation. They're accessing them over networks that aren't necessarily provided by the corporation as well. So a very different dynamic as we go from before on the left to after on the right here as well. You can see a huge explosion in the number of collaboration applications, different types of infrastructure services that are being consumed as well. You know, we call it multi-cloud, lots of different capabilities, and with them comes lots of risk. Also, assailants are looking to capitalize on this by targeting these new cloud capabilities and these remote workers in different ways. So we need to think differently about securing them. At the same time, some of that we bring upon ourselves through not having enough visibility of the sorts of cloud services that we're running as organizations and configuring them and securing them properly as well. And at the same time, of course, there's not enough manpower for us to be able to do this. So a number of challenges get brought to bear. Of course, there are solutions to these, but these are some of the things that we need to think about as we understand how our organizations are changing and we execute our digital strategies. So then we can think about the security implications. Again, we'll talk about after in a moment, but beginning with before, we've got both managed and unmanaged devices in this new world. We're then thinking about the sorts of cloud applications and software as a service that we're using as well. Are our people putting information on there which is sensitive? Do we support that? Is it protected? Should they even be doing that? So different policies need to be considered and different visibility as to what is actually happening and what we want to happen as well. At the same time, the way that people are connecting is changing. Some of the VPN infrastructures that organizations have run have come under real strain as a result of the scale that we've needed to now build into what are fairly static architectural components. And we need to think more elastic about the way our architectures work and supports all of that as well. So lots of challenges. At the same time, we think about SaaS. We're not necessarily just thinking about software as a service that we as organizations wish our people to be using. Of course, there are many, many other things that they may be using in order to have continuity of operations that we may not even see. You think about shadow IT, that's a huge part of this as well. If our policy is only to have a certain set of applications, do we know that that's how it's playing out in the real world? And again, these are things that we really need to think about. And so then as we think about what this could be, I talked about elastic and I talked about architectures because that's a really important part of this, not just bolting on new pillars of capability that don't interact with one another, but taking this as an holistic system, thinking about it in terms of how do we allow you in your personal device to be secure. So looking at it from a device perspective and ensuring that is secure. So that's one part of the picture. But then we need to think about, it doesn't matter where you are, if you're in an office, if you're at home, if you're on public Wi-Fi, let's think about the sorts of policies we apply and then change your ability to access and interact with certain information accordingly as well. So we think about our cloud gateway and applying policy as you look to access software as a service, infrastructure as a service, different types of capability there as well in a holistic way. Or maybe it's just a case of going out to the internet and browsing the web from one of those sites as well, ensuring that we're not only having sensible policies in place about what sorts of sites are known malicious, unknown malicious, that we can get access to, but also in thinking about the sorts of data, because this isn't just about threat prevention, it's about avoiding exfiltration of data and ensuring we're sensible around our data policies as well. And then finally, when you look at it this way, we can also think about automation because we join up all of these capabilities around our visibility into the cloud, the control we have there, our data, whether it's on-premise or in the cloud. Again, common policies there as well. We're then able to think about, regardless of where you are, how do you access these services without having to have multiple different policies for every different situation, but put this under a common architectural banner as well. So these are the different things that we see organizations needing to look at. The other thing I would say here is the world that we know it today is different to what it was yesterday, but it'll also be different again tomorrow. So we need to think about this architecture, not just fitting today's need, but being, as I said, elastic and agile to change to the needs as different users and different services get consumed. The role of the modern CIO is no longer about building out capabilities. It's more about taking capabilities as a service and stitching them together in an integrated and secure way. So those are the different types of agility pieces we can consider. And then we can think about the adversaries as well. So we've seen a massive increase in threats during the pandemic, and we expect this to continue. We've also seen how those threats are starting to target different industries and how those industries are starting to really accelerate their digital transformation strategies as well. And a big part of this is about time. That's something we talk about a lot at McAfee, is time. You see time a lot in cybersecurity: time to detect, time to respond. These types of capabilities are things that we constantly need to be accelerating. And so when you think about some other attacks that we've seen, like Shamoon, we knew about that attack fairly early in the piece, but then the time to action wasn't necessarily as rapid as it could be. So again, good opportunities for us to accelerate the time between starting to see something and being ready for it and getting ahead of it. And that's another dimension that we really think of here as well. Current thinking is about, how do I protect myself when I get attacked? Which makes sense. As soon as you get breached, you need to have the things in place to be able to quickly recognize it and quickly respond to it in an automated way as much as possible to accelerate time and to reduce cost. But we can do better than that. We have huge global threat telemetry, and that can help us do some very powerful things. It can help us automate. When we do see something, we can apply policies that are sensible and then automate the remediation of that and our actions we want to take to prevent it. But the bigger thing we can do is start to move from prevention to prediction. We can start to predict that an attack's coming. We can see, is this something which is going to hit me? Is it in my area? If it does hit me, am I secure? And even further than that, data needs to be actionable in order to be valuable. So we can then start to say, what are the things that I can do in order to ensure that I'm secure? What are the things that I need to change in my environment, on the endpoint, in the network, in my cloud infrastructure? Am I secure, and what are the things I can do to ensure that if I do get hit by these sorts of breaches, that I can defend myself and I'm protected against them? And we call that shift left. And here's a few simple ways of looking at it. This is a dashboard from what we call MVISION Insights. It's cloud threat telemetry, but it's very specific to each organization that uses it. So we can do a few things. We can look at the campaign and say, is this a campaign which is going to affect me? It may be globally prevalent, but is it something which is going to affect me? Is it targeting the sorts of operating systems, the sorts of capabilities, even the industry that I'm in? Is this something I need to be worried about based on my context? We can think about global prevalence. Is it a geo-based attack where we can see it's very prevalent in some regions, not so prevalent in mine? Again, another decision-making criteria we might want to think about is we give it a risk rating. We can think about the devices. As I said, if I'm not running certain devices or certain OSs, is that something I need to worry about? At the same time, if it does target those and I have them, how exposed am I? And what action do I therefore need to take on those devices? And then finally, my overall security posture from the endpoint all the way into the cloud, using all manner of elements from the threat telemetry and your architecture. How secure am I, and where can I ensure I've got defense in depth across my entire environment as well, before I've even seen that attack? Really, really powerful preventative capability. And so if we bring that together, there's really a few things that we can tie up. The first thing is, all of these things need to work in harmony. We need to look at this as an agile architecture. Secondly, when we think about the workplace, it's really important as we think about individuals almost as their own workplace and ensuring that they have policies that follow them, that they can do what they need to do securely from wherever they are to whatever they need, and we adjust policy based upon those circumstances. And then the same with adversaries. We are seeing more of those in the new environment. So what can we do to ensure that we don't just prevent them from happening, but we predict them in the first place before we even see them and make actionable choices and decisions around the things that we need to go and do? And this is the power of looking at these things in a joined up architectural way. The environment's going to continue to evolve. The workplace of tomorrow may be different. So having that agile capability in place is absolutely paramount for whatever comes next. Thank you.